My name is Alan Morgan. I work with the Building State Capacity and Productivity Center at WestAT, a federally funded initiative to support state education agencies. And today we have the good fortune of being in Little Rock, Arkansas, and meeting with Commissioner Johnny Key. Commissioner Key, you're part of a new breed, so to speak, among chief state school officers, as I see it. I was a commissioner for 13 years in New Mexico, and the days of the commissioner who had the opportunity to stay quite that long in the office seem to at least not be here today. They may be back someday, but not right now. You're part of a group of about 30-something chiefs, not your age of 30-something, though that may be true as well, but there's a group of 30-something chiefs out there that have been in office now for about 18 months or less, somewhere in that neighborhood. You've got you're in that upper end of that, I think, and come to the office with some unique skills. You come to this office having been a legislator. You're an engineer by profession, as I understand it. So I think there are a lot of us who are engaged in supporting state education agencies that see this as a great opportunity, quite frankly. You bring some relationships to the office that I think will serve, hopefully, the students of Arkansas very well going forward. And we're going to talk a little bit about that today, but particularly at least in the construct of the Every Student Succeeds Act. They've got this new federal legislation, clear movement of a lot of authority and issues and challenges away from the federal government to state government and local school districts, and hopefully to teachers and kids eventually out there. So usually something as massive as a big reauthorization of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act creates some opportunities and some challenges. Tell us a little bit about what you see in those two categories. What's going to be on the horizon? You can take either one first, doesn't matter to me, but how do you intend to proceed from here? You've got about less than 18 months to put this in effect in every school system in this state. What's up?
Well, you talked about my background and my experience, and I started in the legislature in 2003.
Okay.
So on the heels of No Child Left Behind.
Right there at NCLB, right?
Yeah, and so I saw a lot of the policy implications as it came down from the feds and as it was rolled out in the state, because I was actually in a legislative seat with a vote, and seeing how over the years that followed, how much education moved away from allowing the creativity of teachers more to a compliance mentality. And now with the Every Student Succeeds Act, we have the opportunity to restore some of that creativity. The flexibility that law provides helps us, and we really had already started looking for ways to move away from compliance because of the nature of that mindset. Really handcuffed a lot of our educators all over the state. What also is important to know, at that same time, Arkansas had just come out of a very significant school funding lawsuit.
Right, lawsuit, right.
The 2003 session, which was my first session, was marked by conversations of tax increases and school consolidations, and you had rural Arkansas pitted against urban areas. And so seeing all of that and building those relationships with both educators in rural settings, educators in urban settings, legislators, that has really helped as I've taken this role and now have the opportunity to help direct the ESSA rollout in Arkansas. So we're really excited about the notion of moving away from compliance. that is also one of the biggest pitfalls. It is one of the most difficult components, is because for the last 13 years, 14 years now, we've really been focused on the compliance
You
mentality.
built a culture that says,
And it's hard now, as we are telling educators, look, tell us what you think this new system should look like. And there's still, there are folks waiting on us to tell them what it's going to look like. And we're very consistent in our message that that's not how it's going to be this time. So really the opportunity to engage educators, administrators, the community, that I think that's one of our biggest assets in Arkansas, is now the ability to engage the communities, because if we're going to change the educational culture in our state and really in the nation at large, we have to do a better job of engaging the communities. Education can't be something that just takes place between 8 o'clock and 3:30 at school, 5 days a week, 9 months out of the year. Communities need to realize not only are they wanted, they are needed. And for us to really be successful, that community engagement piece has to be part of it.
Wow, that generates so many thoughts, and I'm sure, again, challenges and opportunities for you as you try to work with your board and others, the governor, to help get this done with the legislature and your colleagues over there. All of that suggests to me that the underlying importance of two things that I would appreciate your commenting about. One is how you've been able to take your kind of systems thinking, your systems orientation, kind of what those of us who are not engineers might project as the behavior of those of you that are engineers. You look at things in a very systematic way. How are you taking your kind of systems mentality, if you will, and you're working in an environment where an appreciation for a systematic approach may not have historically been there. Right. So you get to be kind of the new person bringing in this thinking about how systems should be developed, implemented, communicated, and then that leads to the second point, which is really communication. How do you, you're very active, you're a leader state in the Strategic Performance Management Initiative. I would appreciate you just taking a few minutes to take us through kind of both of those things, because I suspect your systems orientation is really an important part of what you're doing with strategic performance management in a state. Yeah. So give us an orientation to both, if you would.
Well, absolutely. When I came on board, one of the first questions I asked was, what are we doing? What are we good at as an agency?
Okay.
What are we not so good at? And we started asking folks outside the agency. Give one example. We actually engaged the State Parent Teachers Association. Okay. And I asked the question internally, when was the last time we've actually had a conversation with the Arkansas PTA? Not only could no one remember the last time, they couldn't remember if it had ever happened. So, there is a huge stakeholder group right there that we as an agency may not have been doing a very good job of engaging. So we made an effort to do that. Starting with building blocks like that and looking at those other stakeholders, we created the Commissioners Forum on Educational Excellence. This began before we even thought that ESSA would pass. I'm usually a very optimistic fellow.
Yeah, most of us were not all that optimistic.
I was very pessimistic about that.
Right.
But we were going to move forward anyway to do what we could do as a state. So we started engaging those stakeholders and asking and looking internally about the systems. And we learned a lot about ourselves during that time, and systems that we thought were working well, the perception was they're not working as well as we thought. Dig into that. You find out that the writings, the teachings of Jim Collins, Deming, others who founded the total quality management movement, those were relevant in an educational agency, just like they are in any organization. I've told folks that I don't say that we should run government more like a business. I say we should run government agencies like the State Department of Education more like an effective organization, because there are a lot of businesses that are not effective.
That's right. That's true.
And so a lot of the systems work that we have done has been focused on trying to create an effective organization. How do we do that? It becomes cliche, but you really have to tear down the silos. And one thing that I found in the agency was the history of the agency had been very siloed. Now, my predecessors, Dr. Kimbrell, Mr. Wood, they started some of that work, and we really tried to accelerate it. To give an example, we're working on a significant reading initiative in Arkansas. Hopefully in the next few months rolling that out, but we've been very deliberate on how to put that together. And one thing that I observed is our school health folks had not been at the table.
Interesting. Okay.
Our child nutrition folks had not been at the table. So when we started pulling the groups together, I said, I need child nutrition here.
Yeah, good for
I
you.
need school health here. I need other pieces of the agency that had not really had not been a part of some of the conversations that they needed to be a part of. And so looking at it from a very team-based approach, and my background in industry had been in quality management. And seeing the importance, seeing how that changes a culture of, where you just show up for work, you sit at that station and you do that job, versus you show up for work, you're engaged with the team, and they are a cross-functional team, and they are constantly throwing ideas and bouncing ideas off of each other. How can this system work better? How can we as a collective team do a better job? That's the culture we're starting to see here in this agency. And because we had started this process before ESSA, it became a natural fit for us
perfectly.
to roll the work and the needs, the requirements for ESSA as a part of that strategic management style. And we're very excited about the direction we're headed.
Yeah, very foresighted, I think, and fortuitous too, to have kind of aligned with that set of values before they became clear that they are, we believe, were the values that we're going to see in the, at least in the federal end of state education agencies as we go forward.
Obviously, the concern that a lot of folks had as I came into this role in March of 2015 was, well, he's not an educator. And this building, this department is full of educators, great educators. And they are doing a fantastic job. But you also have other folks that are non-educators. But bringing the team together where educators have the opportunity to learn from non-educators and non-educators learn from the educators. And as we have rolled some of these components out to our districts, we have found that they've been received very favorably, that they like the vision. Educators around the state like our new vision. They really see that mission of our agency of where we are focused on transforming Arkansas to lead the nation in student-focused education. Not an adult-centered system, but a student-centered system. And I feel blessed to work with such a great team of folks that have bought into that, and they're ready to make it happen.
That's a great attitude, and it's having worked in a state education agency in a building like this for 25 years in Santa Fe, it really, in many respects, comes back to leadership, and you have apparently been able to align with or bring into this set of changes that you're bringing about. You're trying to influence a pretty substantial system here, and back to this comment about system-oriented approaches to change. What's been your greatest allies in this? I know you mentioned a moment ago the strategic performance management. You've got a team of people in the agency that are really, and then a few externals that are working with you that you're at your direction. But I've been so impressed with what I've heard about that this isn't one of those things where the leader comes in and says, this is what we need to do, and I'm going to bring these folks together, and then now I'm due somewhere else in 20 minutes. That these are often day-long or multi-day kinds of exercises to really help build that communication and culture of trust between you and a lot of the other folks who are key players in this process. You apparently have been willing to stay in there all day, every day. When it's needed, you're there. How important is that? I'm going to get to a question in a moment that I want to give you a moment to think about, and that has to do with what kind of advice you might share, not presuming that you know what other states are facing, but you surely know what Arkansas is facing, and you have a sense of how this is going to be complicated and yet an opportunity all across the country. What advice can you give other chiefs across the nation, whether they are, a year or two in office or whether they're the 15-year veterans, of which there are very few? But that said, talk with me about the importance of this strategic performance management in the relationship to going forward from here. What you see in the next number of months, and how does that then translate into advice for other states?
Yeah, I think from my perspective, it's about asking the right questions. For me, as the leader of the agency, it's not about me deciding what needs to be done and sending out a directive that says we shall do this. Mm-hmm. It's about asking those questions of the people who really know the answers, and then being able to set a path with the collective wisdom of my leadership group, not just my leadership group, but our unit leaders all the way to the administrative assistants. I mean, I take the approach here that no one in the agency should be limited by their position.
Okay.
If someone has a good idea, I don't care if that idea comes from the person that's answering the telephones. So how does that relate? It gives not just a top-down, but it's a bottom-up also feedback loop. So my encouragement is, and of course in this agency in Arkansas, I work for the governor. I serve at the pleasure of the governor, and I've had great support from him, and his encouragement to me has been to lean forward, do tough things, do challenging things, shake things up a little. Those weren't his words, but really that's, we in Arkansas, we need to make a culture change in education. So most states, I give this anecdote, my first CCSSO meeting.
Okay.
We had breakout sessions for the chiefs only 2 or 3 times, and during these sessions, a chief would stand up and say, I'm from whatever state, and we're 49th in education. And another breakout session, another different chief, different state would stand up and say, well, we're 49th in education. About the 4th time that happened, I was sitting next to Stephen Pruitt, who had been on the job for 37 days from Kentucky. And someone said, we're 49th in education. I smacked him. I said, man, that's really weird, because I thought we were 49th in education.
Right.
And the only chief that didn't claim to be 49th, obviously Massachusetts. So
Mitchell Chester said, not us.
He said, not us. That's right. So what Dr. Pruitt and I realized there, we agreed that evidently there's Massachusetts is number 1 and a tie for 49th.
That's good.
Anyway, I've gotten a lot of laughs out of that. But really, what I use that story, and my message to other chiefs is, we all face some of the same challenges. And rankings mean a lot to the people that write opinion columns and who want to do comparisons state to state. But what I try to focus our folks on is don't look at the 49th or the 45th or the 37th or whatever it is. We need to look at number one. Mm-hmm. So, Chester, I'm coming after you.
Yeah.
Our goal is to be first.
Mm-hmm.
And we're taking, in education, my experience as a legislator, as a son of a 30-plus year educator. My mom taught elementary, and she saw all the different things that came 3 or 4 years at a time, and then we'd move on to something else.
You bet.
Taking a long-term focus, a long-term approach is what I'm encouraging my team here to do. Mm-hmm. One that transcends whether we are here or not, that we're on a direction that in 10 years, if I'm not in this seat, the person who is in this seat can continue that direction, that over the next 5, 10, 20 years, Arkansas is going to lead the nation. Mm-hmm. We're showing that we have the capacity to do it. Mm-hmm. The governor's computer science initiative is one where we've nationwide, there are folks who look at Arkansas as saying they're really doing something positive in computer science education. We can do that across the board, but other states, other chiefs, looking at that 5, 10, 20 year horizon of where do you want your state to be? I know where I want Arkansas to be, and it's going to take a lot of culture change to get us there. And really, we look, it has to start here. It has to start in the agency. Where no longer can the agency be the place that the edicts come out of Little Rock and this is how you shall work. One of the first meetings that I went to with a group of superintendents had a superintendent say, Commissioner Key, can you tell me what is your vision for my school? Mm-hmm. And I said, well, respectfully, I can't tell you the vision for your school. You have to determine the vision for your school. You and your community, your board, your educators, your team. For Arkansas, we're creating a vision for what Arkansas wants to be, but each community is going to get there in a different way, and they have to. In the context of what other chiefs could look for is take advantage of the diversity in their state, whether it be regional, whether it be ethnic, whatever it is. Take advantage of that to really shoot for the stars in those communities, because success in Little Rock is going to look different than success in South Arkansas, Pine Bluff, Northwest Arkansas. So, and really I've seen we're starting to have people buy into that notion. And it's not meaning that our expectations are any less for kids in Little Rock as they are for kids in North Little Rock. I mean, the expectations are expectations of success, preparing those students to be successful once they get out of high school, but not just high school. Our expectations need to be for them to be successful post secondary, for the work world, all those future possibilities.
So
that it's not just enough for us to get them successfully out of 12th grade. As a state, we have to be bought in to their success beyond that.
Your point about, the capital, not all wisdom resides in the capital, and the fact that you're attempting to ensure that there's really ownership within the community, because that's where the kids are. They're not all around the Capitol Mall here. I think is so important, and is appreciated that that's kind of your message to your colleagues across the country. Let me ask one more, and then we'll wrap up, and that is to ask you specifically about what didn't get asked. If you had a message, you had a question you would like to have seen raised about where Arkansas is going and what you expect to accomplish in whatever that time of leadership, which we hope is a long time, but without that being the key issue, what is it that we should have asked you today that you wanted to share as a message?
Probably the business community's involvement.
Okay.
And because that has really gotten in the education world, from some circles, that seems to be a negative. that the business community is pushing us to create graduates that are good employees, that are good workers, ready to fill a slot on the line somewhere. And my experience is our employers today, our business community in Arkansas, they want the next generation of creators, of innovators, not someone that just has an education to be able to fill a slot, but someone that gets the type of education that they become the next Bill Gates, or many of the countless thousands of people who are creators that we don't hear about, that are really changing life for the rest of us. We have a premier medical school here at University of Arkansas for medical sciences. Who are we preparing that are going to be the next researcher that will find that cure for cancer? The business community wants that. So the notion that our business community is looking for mind-numb robots to just fill a slot, I think that is a notion that we as a state and we as a nation really need to get past, because we're educating those creators, those innovators, those future educators that are going to then educate the next generation of creators, innovators, entrepreneurs. And in Arkansas, when you have a history of some of the greatest innovators when it comes to the business world, the folks like Sam Walton, J.B. Hunt, Axiom, you look at what's happening in Arkansas, and we're going to take it to the next level so that these kids that we're educating today don't have to go to Dallas. When I graduated from high school, when I thought that I was going to finish college, go to Dallas in computer science engineering and make my life there.
You were, right.
Okay, so by the time I got to the University of Arkansas, I decided, nope, chemical engineering is what I want to do. And when I graduated, I was married and didn't want to leave the state.
Right.
So I had an opportunity to stay in Arkansas. That's what we're about. We're about creating those opportunities to where you're going to be successful if you go to Dallas, if you go to LA, if you go to New York, or you're going to be successful if you stay right here in Arkansas. And really, we're talking about changing the world for a lot of these kids whose horizon is just an arm's length away. We've got to give them that horizon of miles down the road so they can see what's possible.
Commissioner Johnny Key, you have been very enlightening, engaging. I really appreciate the effort on behalf of the Building State Capacity Center at Westat. We are very honored to have had this few moments with Commissioner Johnny Key, Commissioner of Education for the state of Arkansas. And hopefully, as the Education Commission of the States and the Building State Capacity Center and Productivity Center go forward, we'll be able to share these messages with your colleagues and others who have an interest in how America is going to take this opportunity and to do what's right for our kids. We thank you, Commissioner Key.
Thank you.